I was 6 minutes into a routine salvage sweep when the ground answered me. Not with noise, not with movement, with attention. My scanner pinged a mass beneath the basalt shelf. Human-sized, clean geometry, no known alloy match. No power signature either. Dead. Old. Exactly the kind of forgotten relic that keeps Galactic Restore profitable and predictable. I marked the spot, powered down my thrusters, and dropped in on foot. That's when the air changed. No wind. No dust. Just a pressure shift, like the space around me had decided to listen. I froze, hand hovering over my cutter, every instinct screaming that I'd stepped into something that wasn't broken, just waiting. I brushed away the ash and saw it. A small starship. Not crashed. Not buried by force. Placed. Its surface wasn't scarred by time. Just dulled, like a machine that had chosen stillness. Curved panels interlocked without seams. No ports. No weapons. No insignia. And yet the shape made sense in a way I couldn't explain, as if it had been designed around a human presence. I did what salvagers always do when curiosity outweighs caution. I reached out. The moment my glove came within a few centimeters of the hull, something inside the ship shifted. Not power, orientation. The craft subtly rebalanced itself, responding to me like a living system adjusting its posture. My scanner went wild. Internal structures rearranging. Energy pathways aligning. A ship that was supposed to be dead had just acknowledged me. "This isn't a salvage," I whispered. "It's a conversation." I should have walked away, logged the coordinates, let the authorities or corporations tear it apart in the name of research. That's the smart move. That's the safe move. Instead, I did what I always do. I stayed. If you enjoy immersive sci-fi salvage stories like this, I'd love to have you along. Subscribe to Galactic Restorer, like the video if this hooked you, and comment what you think this ship really is. I circled the ship slowly, careful not to trigger whatever instinct had caused it to react. The closer I looked, the clearer it became. This thing wasn't designed to be impressive. It was designed to be approachable. No sarpeggios, no agresivo angles. Every curve guided the eye inward toward the center, toward where a human would naturally stand. Even the height was intentional. Roughly my size, as if the designers had calibrated it against a body like mine. I ran a low-energy scan. The hull wasn't metal in any conventional sense. It was layered, composite sheets interwoven with something crystalline, flexible enough to absorb stress, but rigid enough to protect whatever lay inside. A self-healing skin, dormant but intact. No cockpit, no visible controls. "That's a problem," I muttered. "Salvage works because machines follow rules. You find the interface, you trace the power, you repair or extract." This ship broke that logic entirely. It didn't present itself as something to be used. It presented itself as something to be met. When I stepped closer, the ground beneath it warmed slightly. Not heat, not radiation. A localized field adjustment, subtle enough that I might have imagined it if my suit hadn't confirmed the shift. The ship wasn't waking up. It was making space. I recorded everything, but not on my public log. Personal storage only. Old habit. Dangerous one. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't meant for open channels. A soft, resonant pulse through the hull. Too low to hear, but strong enough to feel in my chest. The ship tilted almost imperceptibly, mirroring my stance. "You're calibrated for interaction," I said slowly. "Not piloting. Not transport." That realization hit hard. This wasn't a vehicle in the traditional sense. It was a tool designed to operate with someone. Close. Personal. Cooperative. Something like this doesn't get abandoned by accident, which meant one of two things. Its creators were gone, or they decided it was safer for the galaxy if it stayed asleep. Neither option made me feel better. I didn't touch it again. Not at first. Instead, I set up my portable rig a few meters back and watched how the ship responded to an action. Most machines degrade when ignored. This one didn't. Its internal systems stayed in a low-energy equilibrium, constantly correcting microscopic drift like a mind idling between thoughts. Hours passed. The light shifted across the plateau. The ship adjusted its orientation to keep the same relative relationship with me. Not the sun. Me. That's when I realized what the first repair actually was. Trust. I powered down my cutter, removed my helmet, and sat on a rock in front of it. No tools. No scanners. Just presence. If this ship was built to cooperate, then barging in like a technician was the wrong language entirely. The resonance changed immediately. The field around the hull softened, expanding just enough to overlap my position. My suit didn't alert. My vitals stayed stable. It was inviting synchronization. I exhaled slowly and stepped forward. The moment I crossed the threshold, symbols bloomed across the surface, fractals, not letters, patterns that weren't meant to be read, but understood. They shifted based on my breathing, my stance, my focus. A feedback loop. This is insane, I whispered, smiling despite myself. The ship wasn't responding to commands. It was responding to state. Emotion. Intention. That explained everything. The lack of controls, the human scale, the way it mirrored movement. I made a single, careful adjustment, rerouting a dormant energy thread using my rig, not to power the ship, but to stabilize the interaction field. The ship accepted the change instantly, integrating my tech without resistance. That was the moment it truly woke up, not with sound or light, but with clarity. The pattern sharpened. The resonance deepened. The ship now knew I was here to fix, not to take. And somewhere deep inside its structure, something ancient shifted from standby to readiness. I just crossed a line no salvager ever should. The moment the ship accepted my adjustment, the environment responded. Not dramatically. No soclaves, no alarms, just a subtle recalibration of reality around us. My instruments recalculated local gravity by a fraction of a percent. Timestamps drifted out of sync by milliseconds. Effects so small they'd be dismissed as sensor noise if they weren't happening all at once. This ship wasn't just interacting with me. It was interacting with the place. I pulled historical scans of the region, overlaying old orbital data with current readings. The plateau had always been stable. Too stable. No tectonic movement. No erosion patterns matching the age of the rock. It was as if the land itself had been maintained. The ship wasn't abandoned. It was stationed. A memory surfaced then, something I'd heard years ago in a fringe salvage forum. A rumor about caretaker craft, machines left behind by precursor civilizations to quietly correct stellar-scale problems. Not conquerors, not explorers, janitors of the universe. I laughed it off back then. Now, standing in front of a human-sized starship that could subtly bend physical constants without announcing itself, the idea stopped being funny. I noticed markings beneath the outer layer of the hull, etched deep, not decorative but functional. Coordinates, not spatial, temporal. This ship wasn't tracking where it was. It was tracking when it was. That realization hit me harder than any weapon system ever could. If this ship was designed to monitor time-sensitive instabilities, then its shutdown wasn't random. It had gone dormant because something had crossed a threshold. Either the danger passed, or it became too large to handle alone. The ship pulsed once, slow and heavy, like a heartbeat acknowledging the thought. "You're still working," I said quietly. Even now, and for the first time since I'd found it, the ship did something unmistakably deliberate. It turned, not toward me, but toward the sky. I followed its gaze. At first, I saw nothing, just the pale sky stretched thin over the plateau, clouds drifting slow and indifferent. Then my visor compensated, filtering wavelengths my eyes couldn't catch on their own. That's when the distortion appeared. A seam, not a tear, not a rift. A misalignment in the sky itself, like two layers of reality slightly out of phase. Subtle enough that no standard sensor would flag it. Obvious enough that once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. The ship pulsed again, sharper this time. My instruments spiked. Gravitational variance. Chronal noise. The kind of readings you only get near experimental drives or failed jumps. And this was coming from above, not from orbit, not from any known structure. "You've been watching this," I said. "Haven't you?" The ship rotated back toward me, then slowly angled itself between my position and the anomaly. A protective gesture, instinctive, almost practiced. That's when the timeline overlays finished compiling. This plateau hadn't always been quiet. Centuries ago, something had happened here. A localized collapse event quickly smoothed over, erased from most records. Trade routes shifted, colonies rerouted. History edited itself around a scar no one wanted to explain. The ship hadn't failed. It had been holding the line. Whatever instability existed above us wasn't new. It was contained, or it had been until now. My interaction, my repair, had increased the ship's operational clarity, and with it, its awareness of just how thin that containment had become. A warning icon flashed on my console. Long-range detection. A vessel had just exited FDL at the edge of the system. I checked the signature and felt my blood run cold. Corporate Salvage Authority. Licensed. Armed. Thorough. They weren't here by coincidence. Someone had noticed the same irregularities I was seeing now, just without understanding what was causing them. The ship drifted closer to me, its field tightening, resonance climbing. It wasn't panicking. It was preparing, and I realized, too late, that restoring this ship hadn't just woken a machine. It had put me on the clock. I killed my external lights and dropped my profile to minimum output. If the corporate salvage ship was scanning blind, I had maybe 20 minutes before they started doing it properly. The small ship beside me didn't ask what I planned. It already knew this wasn't about curiosity anymore. This was about readiness. Okay, I whispered, forcing my hands steady. If you're going to wake up, it's now. I interfaced my rig again, but this time the ship didn't wait for me to find the right pathway. The hull opened, not physically, but dimensionally, revealing layered systems folded into spaces that shouldn't exist. Each layer hummed with a different purpose: stabilization, observation, correction. No weapons. No engines in the way humans understood them. This wasn't a starship built to flee danger. It was built to end it. I focused on one failing lattice, a temporal damping array that had degraded during its long dormancy. Repairing it meant rerouting energy through my own systems, risking a cascade that could fry my shuttle and strand me here permanently. The ship hesitated, not from fear, from calculation. I know, I said softly. But if they take you, this place won't survive long enough to matter. That did it. Energy flowed, controlled, precise, cooperative. The array stabilized, and the distortion in the sky above us smoothed slightly, like a wound being held shut by careful hands. My console lit up with alerts. The incoming vessel had changed course. They were locking onto something now. Us. The ship's resonance deepened, stronger than before, vibrating through the ground. I felt it not as sound, but as intent. It wasn't powering up. It was synchronizing with the plateau, the sky, the anomaly itself. For the first time since I'd landed, I understood the real risk. If this ship completed its restoration here, it wouldn't just fix the instability. It would announce to the galaxy that something ancient was awake again. And there were people out there who would do anything to make sure they were the ones holding the leash. If you're enjoying this journey, take a second to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment. It really helped Galactic Restorer reach more explorers like you. The corporate vessel dropped out of silent running above the cloud layer. I didn't need visuals to know that. My instruments screamed as soon as their scan cone swept the plateau. Clean, methodical, invasive. The kind of attention that turns discoveries into assets. The small ship reacted instantly, not by hiding, by decoupling. The resonance field around it shifted, no longer centered on me, but on the anomaly overhead. The air thickened, pressure folding inward as if space itself was being gently persuaded to behave. The plateau's ancient stability wasn't natural, it was enforced, and the ship was the enforcer. My console flashed a priority alert. Ownership protocols invalidated. I blinked. You're blocking claim authority? The ship's surface pattern sharpened, lines flowing like currents around stone. It wasn't rejecting them out of defiance. It simply didn't recognize the concept. Ownership, control, command. Those ideas didn't exist in its framework. This wasn't a relic meant to be recovered. It was infrastructure. The corporate ship launched a probe. Sleek, armed, expensive. It descended fast, broadcasting standard acquisition signals. The moment it crossed into the ship's influence, the probe stopped. Not destroyed, not disabled, just paused, frozen in a perfectly stable pocket of space-time. No explosion, no warning shot, just a quiet, terrifying demonstration of capability. I felt very small then, not powerless, but irrelevant in the way a bystander is irrelevant to a storm. The ship drifted closer to me, close enough that I could feel the hum through my boots. It wasn't asking for permission. It was informing me. A decision was being made, and I was part of it. If I stayed, I'd be implicated, labeled a collaborator, or worse, a variable to be removed. If I left, the ship would continue alone, facing forces that would escalate until subtlety failed. "You don't need me," I said. "You're strong enough." The resonance softened. The patterns dimmed slightly. I understood then. Strength wasn't the problem. Perspective was. This ship wasn't built to fight the galaxy. It was built to balance it. And sometimes balance requires someone small enough to choose restraint. Above us, the corporate vessel adjusted its position, weapons charging now. They decided quiet wasn't working. The next move wouldn't be subtle. And whatever happened next would define whether this ship remained a guardian or became a target forever. I shut down my transmitter before the corporate ship could lock onto my signal. If they wanted answers, they wouldn't get them from me, not clean ones, anyway. Silence can be a kind of shield if you know how to use it. The small ship responded immediately, not with power, with alignment. Its field expanded just enough to overlap my suit again, syncing our readings, sharing data in fragments I could barely interpret. Not instructions. Context. It wasn't telling me what to do. It was showing me the consequences of every option I hadn't wanted to consider. If I left now, the ship would remain. It could hold the anomaly for decades more, maybe centuries. But the attention wouldn't stop. More ships would come. More probes. Eventually, force would replace curiosity. If I stayed and fought, the outcome was worse. Even a defensive response would mark this system as significant. That kind of flag never gets removed. There was only one path that reduced harm. Relocation. Not escape. Repositioning. The ship didn't have engines because it didn't travel like other vessels. It adjusted probability, nudged itself along paths that already existed but were statistically unreachable. Moving it meant redefining where here was allowed to be. "You can't do that alone," I said. "You need a reference frame." The resonance tightened. Confirmation. I anchored my rig to the ship's lattice, feeding it my navigational history, my jump scars, my imperfect human shortcuts. Not clean data. Real data. The kind shaped by mistakes. Above us, the corporate ship fired a warning burst. Energy lanced through the sky, stopped short by the stabilizing field. No impact. Just intent made visible. The small ship didn't retaliate. Instead, the plateau began to blur. Space didn't fold. It forgot where it was. The last thing I saw before the transition completed was the corporate vessel drifting slightly off course, its sensors screaming at a system that no longer matched its maps. When reality settled, the sky was different. The ground unfamiliar. The anomaly gone. The ship hovered quietly beside me, intact calm. "Relocated. You just rewrote a region of space," I whispered. The ship pulsed once. Correction, not conquest. And I realized my role hadn't been savior or owner. I'd been a witness. When the resonance finally faded, I was alone. No ship beside me. No hum in the ground. Just my boots pressed into unfamiliar soil under a sky I didn't recognize. The small starship, the caretaker, the stabilizer, whatever it truly was, had completed the relocation and removed itself from the equation entirely. Clean. Precise. Final. My rig confirmed it. No residual fields, no traceable signatures, no anomaly echoes. If someone came looking, they'd find nothing but a normal, boring system. Exactly the way the ship wanted it. I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The jump back to my shuttle was uneventful, and that alone felt wrong after everything that had happened. Machines don't usually leave without taking something. Data, energy, control. But this one hadn't taken anything from me. It had left something instead. On my private logs, a new file had appeared during the relocation. No encryption, no identifier, just a simple, elegant data structure that didn't match any known format. Not a map, not coordinates, a method, not instructions for building a ship like it. That would have been dangerous. Worse, it was a framework for thinking about restoration differently, about approaching broken systems not as problems to be exploited, but as balances to be reestablished. I understood then why it had been human-sized, not because it was built for us, but because it was built to remind us that even something small can carry responsibility far beyond its scale. I left the system quietly, filed a false negative report, another dead rock, another empty salvage run. No one questioned it. They never do when the paperwork is boring enough. But every time I run a restoration now, every hull plate reseated, every reactor brought back from silence, I feel that resonance again. A reminder that not everything broken wants to be owned. Some things just want to be left in better balance than when you found them. And somewhere out there, I know that small ship is still working, watching, correcting, waiting for the next moment when the universe needs a gentle hand instead of a heavy one. Before I go any further, if stories like this pull you in, subscribe to Galactic Restorer, like the video, and leave a comment. Tell me what you think that ship really was. Guardian? Tool? Something else entirely. Your thoughts shape what stories come next. I didn't talk about the ship for a long time after that run. Not to other salvagers. Not to the guild. Not even to myself. Really, I buried the memory under work. Routine hull recoveries, derelict stations, reactors brought back from the brink. The usual rhythm. The safe rhythm. But the method it left me? I started using it without realizing. I stopped forcing restorations to match schematics. Started listening to how systems wanted to settle. Sometimes that meant not repairing something, letting a ship remain partially broken because stability mattered more than perfection. And weirdly, my success rate went up. Less catastrophic failures. Fewer unexplained cascade events. Word spread quietly that my restorations lasted longer than they should. Corporations noticed. So did independent crews. I turned down contracts that felt wrong. Took ones that didn't pay as well, but left systems healthier. Then, 6 months later, I found the first sign I wasn't the only one. A relay station on the edge of civilized space had corrected its orbital drift without external intervention. No srastes fallido, no tags love, just balance restored. The data signature was subtle, familiar, not the ship itself, but its influence. That's when I realized the caretaker hadn't vanished. It had scaled, not one ship anymore. A network of corrections so small they looked like coincidences. A universe quietly being nudged away from disaster, one fractional adjustment at a time. And the most unsettling part? Every correction required a witness. Someone close enough, small enough, human enough. People like me. Once you notice the pattern, it's impossible to ignore. Trade lanes that should have destabilized held steady. Aging jump gates stopped shedding debris. A mining colony survived a stellar flare that should have wiped it off the charts. Each event logged as luck. Statistical noise. Margin of error miracles. I knew better. The signatures were faint, but consistent. A correction here. A damping feel there. Always minimal. Always just enough. Whoever, or whatever, had built that small ship hadn't made a single guardian. They'd built a philosophy, and it was spreading. I cross-referenced the events with crew manifests, salvage permits, independent contractors. A list emerged, scattered across systems, unconnected on paper. But every name on it shared one thing. They were restorers, not soldiers, not executives, not explorers chasing glory. People who fix what others abandon. People used to listening to broken machines long enough to understand them. I realized then why the ship had synchronized with me so easily. It wasn't looking for intelligence or authority. It was looking for temperament. The corporate salvage authority never stood a chance of owning it. They would have tried to optimize it, weaponize it, monetize it. The caretaker's design actively filtered that mindset out. If you approached it as an asset, it remained inert. If you approached it as a balance problem, it woke. That scared me more than any weapon system ever could, because it meant the universe had found a way to choose its allies. And it wasn't choosing the powerful. It was choosing the patient. I encrypted my findings and split them across dead drops no one would think to correlate. Not a manifesto, not a warning, just enough breadcrumbs that the right kind of mind might notice. If you're listening closely, you might have already noticed them too. The universe doesn't always need heroes. Sometimes it needs caretakers willing to stay small. There's no final battle to tell you about. No fleet arriving in defiance of the dark. No moment where the universe holds its breath and applauds. If you're waiting for that kind of ending, you won't find it here. Because the work never announces itself. I still salvage, still restore, still drift from system to system, chasing contracts that don't make headlines. And that's exactly the point. The caretaker network, if that's even the right word, doesn't want recognition. It wants continuity. Every now and then, when I'm deep inside a hole that should have collapsed years ago, I feel it again. A familiare laiment. A suggestion, not a command. A reminder that there's a version of the fix that leaves fewer scars on the universe. Sometimes I follow it. Sometimes I don't. And that matters too. Because balance isn't obedience. It's choice. I never saw the small ship again. Not directly, but I stopped looking for it. Once you understand what something is doing, you don't need to watch it work to trust it exists. If you're out there fixing things, machines, systems, even people, maybe you've felt it too. That moment when doing less is the more careful act. When walking away is part of the repair. That's the real restoration. Not returning things to how they were, but leaving them just stable enough to become something new on their own. And somewhere, in the quiet spaces between stars, something small is still adjusting the balance. Not to save the universe, just to keep it from tipping too far.